Okay, well, hi everybody. I'm Kelly from Cooper-Siegel Community Library, and I have the pleasure to sit here with Audrey Russo, who I didn't really work with years ago, but sort of. There was a little peripheral connection when I worked at the Allegheny Intermediate Unit and Pittsburgh Technology Council, who Audrey is the CEO of, was really involved in some cool stuff with like creativity and technology with education. So that was really cool. So we are talking to Audrey Russo, who is the CEO of Pittsburgh Technology Council. And I'm excited to just share what the Pittsburgh Technology Council is about with people who may have not ever heard of the PTC and maybe don't know things that are happening in Pittsburgh that are really exciting around technology. So, okay, so Audrey, tell us a little bit about you first.
Oh gosh, it's hard to know where we'll start with that. I've been in Pittsburgh, believe it or not, I can't believe it, 20 years. And I'm a New York native, and I've lived lots of different places. And I came here through an acquisition of Alcoa.
Okay.
And I work for a company called Reynolds Metals in Richmond, Virginia in IT. And we got acquired. And Alcoa created like just a great opportunity for me. And I relocated to Pittsburgh with my family at the time. And it was really sort of cool because I was pretty excited about coming to Pittsburgh, believe it or not, even though people are like, you're going to Pittsburgh. And I felt like a warmth of the community. I live in Squirrel Hill, and I felt like it was sort of reminded me of how I grew up, and very diverse in my neighborhood, and people who were close to the universities, close to the hospitals. You had a very diverse community of all kinds of people. And so fast forward, I've been here, worked for a company called Maya Design, which was started by 3 faculty that came out of Carnegie Mellon, and then has later birthed out other companies. And then every time I thought about leaving Pittsburgh, something happens, and I got recruited to take this job at the Pittsburgh Technology Council 12 years ago. And I haven't looked back since. And I've just been really impressed with the amount of intimacy that the community has, yet some of the big dreams. I get a chance to work with the best and brightest people that are in this region. So my view of Pittsburgh is perhaps different than others, because I get to work with people who are building companies, the heads of universities, people who are doing research, as well as the big corporations. And that's, we were started, a little bit about the Tech Council. It was started back in 1983, the oldest and largest technology trade association in North America.
Oh, that's very cool.
Very cool. We have over we range between 1,000 to 1,200 companies, which is pretty big. You have to be a company to be a member. At the mothership of the Tech Council, we are what is called 501c6 and a for-profit. And the C6 allows us to do advocacy work on public policy. So there are at least two of us that are very focused on public policy. We get involved in things like immigration reform, to making sure that Southwestern Pennsylvania is an amazing place to do business, issues around research and development, tax credits, and every kind of tax structure, in terms of making sure that this is an amazing place for innovators to build tomorrow. And so that's been really quite exciting to be able to work at the federal, state, and local level, even with our mayors and people who are all around the region trying to build tomorrow.
That feels that feels really broad. Like that's
really broad.
Big work.
It is, and that's probably why I'm still there having fun and never bored. So we really stand on 4 pillars that are they're not equally weighted. It sort of depends upon the time of the year and the things that matter. So I mentioned before about public policy and community, advocacy work. Then we also work on business development. And what is business development? It's making sure that companies have what they need to build their companies. So that could mean venture capital, helping with venture capital in getting access to companies, as well as, and that can come from all over the world. We're very global in terms of our relationships. Most of the money that comes into Pittsburgh that is invested in technology companies, 70% comes from outside the region. So the wealth, the venture money comes from venture capitalists that live lots of places, Silicon Valley, New York, Utah, Europe, you name it. And that is what has really fueled the economy in tech over the last 10 years in particular, as well as relationships with big corporations from around the world that might have interest in the innovation that's here. So when you think of business development for a company, it could be a small company that's just getting their sea legs, and they really need to have, strategic investors, or they need to find customers, or they need to be able to drive talent attraction strategies, anything so that they can build their tomorrow. And so we help with that with lots of programs and services and connections. We also, what makes it so fascinating and different than in other cities, are connections with the big multinationals that are here, like the Alcoas, the PNCs, the Federated, ANSYS. We can go down the list of all these companies. They're also part of our tech community because they actually hire a ton of people in tech. It used to be 10 years ago, very often it was consultants. And now, since it's so important that tech really, like PNC says, we're a tech company that happens to handle, finances.
Interesting.
So it's true. Tech and innovation have really allowed these companies to proliferate over the years because they, just because tech has changed everything in that. And I'm not necessarily even just talking about Bitcoin and things like that. I'm talking about how we bank, how we interact with customers, how people are, the wallet that was started by PNC so many years ago shifted the banking industry in terms of what does it mean to have these sort of semi-autonomous relationships where you can bank virtually.
Yeah, I feel like you could say so many companies now are technology companies because of, it's just part of service delivery. It's part of, back end management, all that stuff. So yeah, I guess that probably gets murky, like who's considered a technology company.
Yeah, it's so true. I was just going through that with a reporter this morning that we were talking about a data set that she had found that was put together, I forget by who, and I was starting to peel it apart, and I said, this data isn't really clean because I don't know what the definition is of tech. And if you use, what they call NAIC codes, those codes will definitely tell you categorically, but they haven't really kept up with your point. Who is a tech company? So diving into that data is a little trickier.
Yeah.
I can tell you that people might be really interested in, I mentioned that two of the pillars that we do. The other thing is talent attraction, really trying to develop the existing talent that's here, not leaving people behind. We're forging an apprenticeship program for high school grads. Great. And that's coming out soon. People can go to our website at 40 by 80. And they can see something called Apprenti. We're really excited about that. A lot of the jobs that are available today and that are very well-paying jobs are not necessarily jobs that require fully matriculated undergraduate degrees.
Right.
But they are what we call stackable skill sets. Like you learn a particular skill, then you can add to it. So you could matriculate through a university system, whether you use a boot camp, that we call them boot camps. And then like for 16 weeks, you might learn, some code, you get a job, but then you want to learn more. You might go to a community college, grab a couple more classes, and then cumulatively go through your career and, matriculate accordingly if you want.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting thing about what's going on today.
Well, and that's so great that you're working with kids, high school students, because I feel like that's what, I think one of Pittsburgh's struggles is that people come here for school and then they leave.
Right.
And so that's one of the things probably that's going to be so helpful in keeping talent here and keeping people here is kind of educating them here and getting them kind of connected, and they'll stay. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also trying to figure out and keep the conversation alive in a way that we probably haven't addressed it, very often this whole thing about science, technology, engineering, and math, it becomes intimidating. People girls in particular tend to drop out of it by the time they're like in 9th grade. It's not as cool unless you're a big video gamer or you're actually hacking in high school.
Right.
And we have to do a lot to really change the conversation in terms of why those skill sets are so important.
You can up the cool factor.
Yeah, I know. Someone once said to me, Audrey, part of your problem is you're not cool. You got to be cool. I'm like, wow, that's rough.
I don't know. I feel like your background is certainly cool. I feel like you're very cool.
Yeah, you might be cooler than me though.
Oh.
I think I'm cool.
I don't know. I do. I think you're very cool. So here's a question for people, again, who aren't in the tech business in Pittsburgh. What should we know about what is happening in Pittsburgh regarding technology right now? Yeah, like what's important for the non-tech people to know?
So you need to know what's really interesting is we do a report every year and we look at the number of people that are actually working in quote unquote tech companies, right? And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, and I think you eloquently pointed out, what is a tech company? But let's say we say a tech company is a company that actually has a solution with intellectual property that is designed to execute against something, right? So that could be companies that people might hear of locally, like Duolingo. They have their own technology, their own solution, etc. 25% of the people in this 10-county area are either working in tech or work for a tech company. Okay, and then 33 of that 25%, 33% represent payroll for the region. Wow. So they tend to be the highest paid jobs. And that has changed over a decade. We've gone from like 18 to 25%, now to 33% on the salary side. And so it's fascinating because it's shifted the economy. What I mean is it shifted the economy. People will say, oh, Lawrenceville, look what happened in Lawrenceville and East Liberty and quote unquote gentrification and changes. Well, what comes along with people who tend to make more money is that they want amenities. And so those amenities occurred because of the demand.
Right. And
so that demand, whether we like it or not, there's lots to talk about in this whole thing of gentrification. Yeah. I'm just pointing out just sort of a linear conversation in terms of what these impacts have been. And that's
and again, as a non-tech person, I could see that driving the whole restaurant boom.
Exactly.
That's just been huge. And I can see that's a major amenity if people are coming from other cities or coming from larger cities or again, having more expendable income, wanting to eat some cool food, go to cool places. Yeah. So that's changed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a requirement. It's been a little heartbreaking for me to watch, just as other cities have struggled with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because what's happened to the restaurant scene. I mean, I even have goosebumps now just thinking about it because I was here 2 decades ago when I knew every restaurant. I knew every, you know what I'm saying? I knew everything. Yeah. There was nothing new. And there wasn't this kind of array of, the assortment for your palate. There really wasn't. And now there really, isn't, it's there. Like, every day,
I can't keep up.
Right. The paint of the community has been just incredible.
Yeah.
So, I worry about that, right? We lost a lot of restaurants, but so did New York. New York lost a lot of restaurants, right? There's no Broadway. There's no, the museums were closed down. People weren't going there for tourism. So,
Yeah, and I just read an article this morning about how New York is right now grappling with what it'll mean after we're done, after the pandemic has calmed down for, downtown. And I feel like Pittsburgh is probably going to face that same conundrum with people working remotely. It's now totally feasible. It's been done. People love it. And so what that will mean for this downtown area, certainly in Pittsburgh. Yeah. So it's a lot of changes.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, right? It could be downtown becomes an epicenter of residential living.
Right.
And that it's totally inverted.
Right.
That's sort of the cartoon I have in my head for downtown.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me that if there were apartments in the PPG building,
that'd be cool.
I work for Alcoa, and they donated that building. And then now that building is residential and office space in the original Alcoa building on 6th Avenue.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could imagine, why couldn't it be a residential hub?
Right. And I think some of those changes that people are thinking don't always have to be at least entirely bad. So if downtown changes and it's not this hub for everyone commuting downtown, you're right. There might be other options for it to change in a really interesting and different way that works.
Right. Like, I'd love to see it be residential, small businesses, restaurants, theater, and even some places for long-term care for people to live, so that they can walk
They
and
have
have
access.
a rich life, right? So they can go to the stadiums, they can do, you know, but it's not necessarily an office environment.
Yeah.
Let it become a play environment. I could see that. I
Yeah.
really could.
Well, here's a question, and we didn't talk about this before we started the recording, so it's a little bit of a curveball. But so one of the things that I guess has become more talked about, it's more people kind of understand that Pittsburgh's not a great diversity city. And while we get voted the best city in so many ways, it's really, you know, we've come to learn one of the worst cities for Black Americans. And you know what, and I've always been curious about what Pittsburgh did wrong to kind of get in this position. But you know, and that's like a larger conversation. But in terms of keeping it to kind of where you are, is the PTC involved in some efforts and some initiatives to kind of address some of that?
Yeah, I mean, after the murder of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and the collision with the pandemic, I actually did like 6 months with my board chair, Jason Wolf, just on a listening tour with leaders that are CEOs, founders of tech companies, some people in the big corporate conglomerates that are here. We just ran regular listening sessions to hear what they were wrestling with, what they thought some of the solutions might be, where they thought their gaps were. And then I also met with many of the local leaders on the Black community and you know, the diverse community, including LGBTQI, as well as, you know, just people of color.
Yeah.
And had lots of candid conversations about, you know, where our weaknesses were.
I bet that was very enlightening.
Yeah, it was really enlightening. It's not, you know, I've just changed. My head is turned upside down on a lot of things, which I'm very grateful for, and I'm also sad about.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that have happened in Pittsburgh. First of all, Pittsburgh, if you go back in time, right, before you and I were even around, I never lived here, et cetera, you go back in time, the Industrial Revolution actually attracted Eastern Europeans.
Right.
Eastern Europeans, I think at one point there were like 82 distinct representations of Eastern European here in Pittsburgh. And they came here, right, to work. So when there was the Great Migration North, where many Blacks moved from the South to the North, particularly Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland, there really weren't jobs for them here, right? There wasn't, you know, we were, you know, people were coming in from Yugoslavia and Croatia and Poland and, you know, all these places. So we sort of missed an opportunity in that generation, right, of that much. But we had a couple of things that were going on that included like the History on the Hill, the jazz scene, you know,
the jazz.
that just blow my mind, that are no longer here. And we never cultivated it. We never really cultivated it. And it blows my mind as someone who grew up on jazz and knowing who the great legends were in Pittsburgh. I'm still to this day blown away at what was here. And same thing for film, just it was here. And for whatever happened during that time, that they're no longer here, what happened was we lost manufacturing. So we lost manufacturing, and the flight of, you know, half the population of the city left. And, you know, at that point in time, that's when the Tech Council was started, because they were not going to let the region be known as hell with the lid blown off. They believed that there was intellectual property and an opportunity for tech and innovation to lead the way. And so they saw that, and a bunch of guys, a bunch of white guys saw that. They said, we believe that this is going to be the future, and that's why they started the Tech Council. But what I think the collision has really occurred is that if we haven't grown, right, if our population has remained relatively flat, we're stable now, we shouldn't be shrinking, we should be pretty flat. If it's not growing, who's coming here, right? So how are we, attracting that? And we ignored it over time.
Yeah.
We ignored this whole thing about diversity because we were really focused on a shrinking region, how to attract companies here. And then, here we are, we find ourselves in a place where research has said that if you're a Black woman and you're more likely to have a problem with childbirth here, and in any kind of both maternal health or just overall health here. And we're starting to find things that many in the Black community knew all along, but I think now we're saying, oh my gosh, this is no longer acceptable. We can't do this anymore. So, that's what I heard through listening sessions. Obviously, I'm on the board of the Urban League on the executive committee. I try to as close as I can to make sure that I have a diverse I'm lucky I have a very diverse set of friends who sort of give me their feedback from outside of tech, and talk to me about that.
Yeah.
But it is true. It is true that we had, as a city, we have like, what I think 28% Black in the city. And in the region, it drops down to like 8% when you factor it all in. So our population in and of itself does not reflect like any of the big cities or even second-tiered cities. Other cities like Columbus, Cleveland, St. Louis, they have much stronger representation. Baltimore, in the Black community than we have here. So I think we have a really big uphill to try to attract that. At the Tech Council, we've decided that we are going to run apprenticeships. And that's where we're going to find our way of going deeper into the community and figuring out ways to get people into what I mentioned earlier, stackable skill sets. So for example, cybersecurity, huge need for that. And you don't necessarily need to go to college for it. You need to, have some basic kinds of skill sets that you can start to get into some of these entry-level jobs. Same thing with like help desk, getting involved in trying to troubleshoot and help desk. There's lots of ways for you to gain your foothold into it, but we have to make it cooler and more accessible and inclusive, because if you've got your GED and you go into a company that's filled with all these PhDs and masters in computer science, it's intimidating. It's not considered an inclusive environment. And that's for everyone, for women, for, if you haven't been, hacking around since, middle school, very often you can feel excluded in that kind of environment.
Right.
So we are working on that, and you'll see more of that, but it's going to take time.
Yeah, that feels really like a smart kind of just because I feel like the age of apprenticeship is kind of returning in general, and certainly around technology and, not having to get a 4-year degree and
it's so expensive.
I was going to say, and then go into debt and
But we do have great universities here. And I'm not just saying Carnegie Mellon and University of Pitt. You look at Robert Morris, they're doing some great things in engineering. Look at Duquesne, they have a great program in information technology and management information systems. So, there are these examples, not, you and I aren't getting into Carnegie Mellon. Let's just face it, we're not.
No.
So, no disrespect to you, Kelly, but I'm not getting it either. So, and there
I went to Carlo.
And look, Kathy Humphreys is now going to be running Carlo, and I'm so excited by that. And Carlo has, an amazing nursing program. They have a great focus on social justice, things that people really care about. And, those are other parts of our ecosystem that are just pretty important. You can't be a town of 100% tech. We need people that are, sort of across every discipline to make this, a strong economy.
And I feel like I was really lucky to kind of get a taste of what the Pittsburgh Technology Council does and the kind of work the kind of people that you're surrounded by, you know, it was back in 2012, I guess. So it was
Right.
9 years ago. Anyway, because I feel like a lot of people who even live in Pittsburgh don't quite know that there's this like bumping technology life just like happening, and it's
Oh
easy to
yeah,
get kind of insular with what, you know, like I'm a librarian, so we just kind of associate with libraries and stuff. We
right.
try to do more than that, but it's really like a bumping you know, industry, and it's, I feel like we're starting to get known for that. Pittsburgh is.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some inflection points. One was when Google in 2006 put up a shingle and put like 10 people into Carnegie Mellon.
Mhm.
And then the next thing you know, they said, we're going to create groundswell here. So that was an inflection point. Another inflection point was when Uber came.
Yep.
And, you know, their advanced technology center came and they built out there. But what happened in both of those is that it creates an ecosystem of attracting other companies here. And the only reason they're here is not because of our tax structure. It's not because we're next to an ocean. It's because of the talent. They want to get as close to that talent as early on as possible. And that's what we're known for.
Yeah.
That's what we're known for. So, and Carnegie Mellon definitely is an anchor in that. They have an incredible computer science program. They've got incredible, you know, robotics. But they also have, you know, amazing, you know, amount of Tony Award winners that come out of, you know, come out of their schools, and costume designers, et cetera. So
Writing, they have a great writing program. Yeah.
and they have a great writing program.
Right.
So you sort of take all that. And, you know, remember, people come in pairs, right? Not just because you know, your significant other isn't going to be in comp sci.
Right.
You know, it could be they're doing something else. And
right.
You know,
And that builds it too. Yeah.
and that's what builds it. So I think what people need to understand is that, so then we had, you know, Uber, and from Uber, because of the autonomous vehicles, you know, related work, that we've now got what we call like this affiliated ecosystem, where we have people who are working on autonomous vehicles, sensors, machine learning. And as a result of that, it has attracted others here.
Yeah.
So when Uber started here, they pulled a lot of faculty out of the robotics center, which is actually part of Carnegie Mellon. And what that did is it opened up slots for other people around the world to come to Carnegie Mellon in robotics. And then it also created a pathway for researchers to get close to customers.
It's this big machine with all these moving parts, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what people might be really surprised about is that we have just an incredible amount of people who work in computer science and in engineering and artificial intelligence and machine learning. And they are all part of either building a company, working for a big company, or working for a startup. Yeah. Carnegie Mellon on good years has, I think, started anywhere like 105 startups. I think it was the last year. Wow. The amount of intellectual property that comes out of the University of Pitt is insane, particularly life sciences. It's incredible because of all the money that they're like ranked 4th or 5th in the amount of research that they get from the National Institute of Health.
Oh my.
It's tremendous.
Yeah.
So we attracted all these incredibly, well, I hate using the word smart because we're all smart. It's, well pedigreed through academic rigor to live here.
Yeah.
The philosophy department at the University of Pitt is world known. And I think those are the kinds of things that keep Pittsburgh sort of like at the stable point where we are right now. What I'm looking for is the tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you might be surprised that the Amazon office here, not the warehouse, the Amazon offices here is working on the next iteration of Alexa right here. Voice.
Oh, wow.
Right here.
That is cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Facebook Reality Labs is working on the next. It has nothing to do with what you and I know about Facebook.
Yeah.
But Facebook Reality Labs is working on the next iteration of virtual reality.
Yeah.
And they own Oculus. So, people are working on that. We have a company called Shell Games that has over like 120 people that are working on, work for hire and creating their own virtual reality. So they're one of the largest VR work for hire shops in the United States. And it's
Which
based
is
on the South Side.
incredible. Yeah.
It's incredible. It's right here. Medical technology. I mean, look at Philips. Philips is purchased a company called Respironics that was really active in sleep and sleep apnea. And now Philips has a presence in Pittsburgh, and they're getting ready to move 1,800 people into Bakery Square.
Right. Yeah.
And they are the North American headquarters for all of their sleep. It's big stuff. They're doing a lot of research.
Yeah, I feel like
everyone knows sleep is the new sexy, right? So,
I know, right? That's great. I'm all for that.
yeah.
But I love these kind of conversations that kind of, I mean, I love Pittsburgh. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I went away to school but came back, and these kind of conversations that kind of make me kind of blow my mind with what's happening in Pittsburgh that I know nothing about, and B, kind of reignite that love that I have for the city, like falling in love with the city again for really different reasons. And so this is one of those conversations that I'm just like, oh my gosh, we're such an awesome city.
Yeah, we really are. I mean, even though we're talked about, our issues in the Black community, we can't forget that.
Right.
We have to realize, for us to be a very, very special and dynamic place, that we have to be a place of deep inclusivity and
rest. We have a lot of work.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do, and we can't forget that.
No.
We can't. It has to be part of moving forward. It really
and it has to be part of just every conversation. I mean, I know even within libraries, like, I think what's exciting is this has been a reckoning across the board, and it's nice to know that us in libraries, we've really started to think about it. We're primarily middle-aged white women, right, running libraries, and that's problematic. And so really looking at what we can do to right some of those really kind of ingrained wrongs that we have done, at least just in libraries. So yeah.
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. And when I was a little girl, I used to want to be a librarian.
Oh, that's so cool.
I know, except when I remember someone said to me, Audrey, you have to be quiet.
You don't, though. I'm actually a really loud person, and I'm a loud librarian. I will say you can be a librarian and be loud, but the public will shush you.
I know.
Right. I have gotten shushed by the public, so you could have done it. But I'm so glad you're out there doing what you're doing. It's one of those things that, like, I know just enough to kind of understand a little bit about what the PTC does, but it's one of those things, like, I'm just so glad you're doing that work, and you're out, and you're our person in Pittsburgh. So hopefully this conversation has given people just a little taste of like that bump in underground. It's not even underground, but that kind of thriving life that's happening. That
it really is. And I'm happy to talk to anyone about it, actually.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful. And hopefully people will kind of head over to your website, your Twitter, and you're doing podcasts, right?
We do every week. Show at noon. We do podcasts, we do radio. We get a chance to talk to everyone.
Yeah, that's great.
That part is just insanely, it's a gift.
Yeah, I bet it's really nice to share it with everyone. Well, we'll put all those links, and so people can check it all out. And thanks again so much for talking.
Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks. Okay, see ya.